So today's topic is circulatory pathways. The circulatory system, it conducts the blood, or it carried out the process by the two types of the systems. That means two types of the pathways it is following: open circulatory system, closed circulatory system here. What is meant by the open circulatory system? Open circulatory system. Name itself is explained. It is the open type here. That means in this open type of circulatory system, the heart is pumping the blood. The heart is pumping the blood. So through the blood vessels, the blood enters into the sinuses here. So that means hemocoel. The sinus is also called as a hemocoel because blood lymph. So blood lymph enters into these sinuses. Here completely the entirely blood vessels are not carried out into the blood floating. So open type, the hemocoel is an open space here, like that as a canal-like structures. So in this, through these sinuses, these are going to circulating into the body fluids. This type of the system is called as an open circulatory system here. Example we are taking arthropods here. Arthropods, insects. So that is nothing. Generally, insects we are taking other words. So insects we are taking means, so there the body, heart is presented and sinuses is presented. So through the sinuses, the blood is floating through the sinuses here. Specific blood vessels, they are not carried out into the blood. So this type of the system is called as an open circulatory system here. Then we are taking into the closed type of circulatory system. Closed circulatory system. So in this case of the closed circulatory system, heart is pumping the blood through the blood vessels. So the blood is floating into the closed blood vessels only. So closed blood vessels only. So this type of the circulation is called as a closed type of circulation here. Example we are taking means, this type of the circulation appears annelids, cephalochordates and vertebrates here. So next, the circulatory path. Already we discussed the open type and the closed type. In different animals, the circulation path or the circulations, how they are going to take into the different categories of the organisms we are taking. So first of all, fishes we are taking. In case of the fishes, the heart contains the chambers, sinus, venosus, atrium, ventricle, bulbous, arteriosis here. Bulbous, arteriosus. So these are the chambers. Conus or the bulbous arteriosus is presented here. So through these chambers, the fishes are pumping the blood, they are circulating into the blood here. So here we are taking into the fishes, the blood one time only it is enters into the heart, atrium and the ventricle. So these are reaches only the one time. Later again it is going into the gills and the different parts of the body. So it is called as a single circulation here. So this is called as a single circulation. So in case of the amphibians like that as the frogs we are taking, so they the incompletely divided. So three chambers are presented here. They are atrial chambers, two are presented. So incomplete divided ventricular chamber one is presented here. It is a incompletely divided. So that only here the circulation is occurs. It is a double circulation, but it is a incomplete double circulation is carried out into the amphibians. Even the reptiles also we are taking, reptiles except the crocodilians. So those are conducting into the double circulation. There also the blood is going to mix into the incompletely divided into the ventricle. So amphibians, how they are conducting the incomplete double circulation, reptiles also conduct except the crocodilians. So crocodilians are following the double circulation. Birds, so mammals. So there we are taking into the heart, four chamber heart is presented here. So four chamber heart is presented. So that only the blood is completely divided as a oxygenated or deoxygenated. From here to one circulation is going here. From here to one circulation is coming here. So two times the circulations are occur. So it is called as a double circulation. The birds and the mammals we are taking four complete chambers, four chambers are presented to separating into the oxygenated and the deoxygenated blood. So here the blood is enters into the heart two times here. So one time from the ventricle, so left ventricle to the right auricle, and other one is the right ventricle to the left auricle. It is going to enters here. So like this, two circulations are occurs in the case of the birds and these things. Human circulatory system we are taking. The human circulatory system, double circulatory system. Compared to the all other animals, the structure of the human heart we are taking, it is into the well developed. So it is forming by the four chambers here. So whether you are taking into the human heart structure. So this is the human heart internal structure we are taking. The four chambers are presented, upper two chambers, lower two chambers here. So upper two chambers are atrial chambers, atrium, singly we can call the atrium, and the lower two chambers are called as a ventricular chambers here. The upper two chambers are into the smaller, the lower two chambers are into the bigger ones here, larger ones, not bigger ones, generally larger ones we are taking. So upper two chambers, atrial chambers here. So the right atrium and the left atrial chambers, right ventricular chamber, left ventricular chamber we are. So the right atrial, the right side of the heart is receiving into the deoxygenated blood. Deoxygenated blood, conducting the deoxygen. The left side of the chambers are conducting the oxygenated blood. oxygenated. These two chambers are conducting the oxygenate. These two chambers are conducting the deoxygenated. So like this, the human heart is having into the 4 chambers here. Whether we are taking into the position and the size and the structure of the human heart we are taking. The heart is presented below the sternum at the region of the mediastinum. So in the thoracic cavity below the sternum at the region of both the sides of the lungs, the middle of the lung, that is called as the mediastinum. That mediastinum region, the cardiac notch position, the heart is arranged here. So whether we are taking into the size of the heart, everybody, every person, their heart is having an average. On an average, they are having their fist size. So fist size. So they are having into the heart we are taking. The heart anteriorly, that is upper side we are taking the broader, lower side it is into the narrow. Apex, it is called as a apex here. So the apex somewhat it is curved towards into the left side here. It is not into the straightly, it is slightly curves towards into the left side here. The apex is curves towards into the left side here. So like this, the heart is situated into the thoracic cavity. Whether the weight we are taking means, and on average 300 grams of weight is presented. So it is going to varying between the male and the females. An average weight we are taking, 300 grams of the weight is presented in the human heart we are taking. The heart structure we are taking means, the heart is made up of, or heart is consisted specific muscular structures. They are called as cardiac muscles. Cardiac muscles are forming the heart structure. Cardiac muscles. So these muscles are going to arranging into the 3 layers we are taking. Means they are epicardium, myocardium, endocardium here. Epicardium outer, myocardium middle, and the endocardium the inner ones. So like this, the heart wall we are taking, these are the 3 muscles, muscular layers are forming. So those 3 layers are forming a specific type of the muscles. They are called as cardiac muscles. So these are the a special type of the muscles. These are not the striated muscles and these are not into the smooth muscle here. So both the characters are having the cardiac muscles, so that only these are continuously working without having into the fatigue for a longer duration. So this is into the structure of the externally the features of the heart we are taking. So when we are going to the internal structures, the upper 2 chambers are atrial chambers, atrium, and the lower 2 chambers are called as ventricular chambers here. So first of all, the upper 2 chambers and their walls we are taking. So compared to the ventricular chambers, the walls of the atrial chambers are the thinner. So these are the smaller chambers compared to the ventricle, and their walls are becomes into the thinner here. And the right atrium and the left atrium is separating. So in this diagram, we are not clearly identified. So the separating septums. Here the right atrium and the left atrium is separated with a thin septum is forming. This is called as a intra-auricular septum. Intra-auricular septum here. So this is into the intra-auricular septum. So it is going to separating into the right auricle with the left auricle we are taking. So like that only we are taking the lower 2 chambers, the larger chambers we are taking. So these 2 are also going to separate the right and the left intraventricular septum. Intraventricular septum here. So intraventricular septum is forming. So this is into the intraventricular septum. So this is compared to here. So these chambers are into the thicker chambers. Their walls are becomes into the thicker here because The atrial chambers are act as a collecting chambers. The ventricular chambers act as a distributing chambers here. So from the different parts of the body too, the atrial chambers are collecting the blood. Either the right or the left we are taking means. So ventricles are either the right or the left we are taking. These are going to distributing into the blood to the different parts of the body here. So like these intra-auricular, intraventricular septums are presenting. And not only that, so between the auricles and the ventricles, a separating structure is forming. This is called as a auriculoventricular septum. Auriculoventricular septum here. Auriculoventricular septum is formed. So this auriculoventricular septum is having the opening. So here it is the one opening between the right auricle and the ventricle, between the left auricle and the ventricle. So there is another openings are presented. Two openings are presented. So these two openings are gardening. Actually these openings are useful whenever the auricles are filled by the deoxygen. The right auricle is filled by the deoxygenated blood. The blood is enters into the right ventricle. When the oxygenated blood is filling into the left auricle, that blood enters into the left ventricle valve. So to pass on into the auricles to the ventricles, the blood. So here a passage is presented. Here one passage is presented. So this passage is gardening by the two. Here the two walls are presented. Here the three walls are presented. So these two walls are called as a bicuspid walls here. Bicuspid wall. These three walls are called as a tricuspid wall. The other name of the bicuspid wall is also called as a mitral wall here. So mitral wall. So bicuspid wall and the tricuspid wall, these are going to gardening into the opening of the right auricle to the right ventricle, left auricle to the left ventricle. So these are going to preventing into the backflow of the blood from ventricle to auricle again. This is the basic function of the, so these two walls we are taking. So like these auricles are upper two chambers. The ventricle we are coming into the ventricles. So already we discussed the ventricular walls or the ventricles compared to the auricles. These are into the larger chambers and their walls are into the very thicker. The wall thickness we are comparing here. So the thickness is becomes into the very high. So because to strongly contracted the muscles, their thickness is becomes into the more compared to the auricles here. So that only these are having into the very larger thicker. So walls are present. Whether you are taking these walls, the myocardial that is into the middle. So the myocardial muscles are forming into a smaller projections towards into the inner side of the ventricles we are taking, so both in the right and the left. A myocardial projections are forming. Columnae cornea. So columnae cornea, and the columnae cornea is going to extend it here, forming into the a pillar-like structures is called as a papillary muscles. So papillary muscles. The columnae cornea extension solely is called as a papillary muscles. The papillary muscles are attaches with a string-like. So string-like structures. These are called as a chorda tendina. Chorda tendina, are commonly called as a heart strings here. So with the help of the heart strings, one end is connected with the papillary muscles and the other end they are connected with these bicuspid valves and the tricuspid valve. In the both ventricles, these strings and these structures are presented here. So these are helpful in closing and opening of the tricuspid and the bicuspid valves here. So this is the internal structure is presented into the ventricular chambers we have taken overall. And then the ventricles also open, in the ventricles also opens into the two tubular structures. So this is called pulmonary artery and this is called systematic artery here. The pulmonary artery opens into the right ventricle, systematic artery opens into the left ventricle here. So whenever the blood is collecting the right atrial chamber, deoxygenated blood, so through the opening of this auriculoventricular septum, this is called as the auriculoventricular septum. This AV septum, by opening of the AV septum, the deoxygenated blood is enters into the ventricle. When the ventricles are going to contract, at that time the blood is enters into the pulmonary artery to get the purification here. So like this, it is going to enter in the pulmonary artery. The same way, whenever the oxygenated blood is enters into the right atrial chamber, from that too it is enters into the left atrial chamber, from that too it is enters into the left ventricular chamber. So when these are going to contracting, that time the oxygenated blood is enters into the systemic artery. So through the systemic artery it is going to supply all the parts of the body here. Here, to preventing into the backflow of these two blood vessels, the blood is going to enters. So when these are going to contact, when these are going to relax in that time, to preventing it the backflow, here semi-lunar walls are presented here. So whether you are seeing, so these are appears as the lunar shape. Lunar shape means like this, semi-lunar. So half moon shape structures are forming. So the semi-lunar walls are forming. So here the semi-lunar wall and here so this is called as a pulmonary artery semi-lunar and this one called as a systematic artery semi-lunar walls are forming here. So like this, the ventricular structures you are taking, so internally these structures are so presented here. And then coming to the pathway of circulation we are taking means, so blood once it receives into the right atrial chamber deoxygenated blood, HbCO2, deoxygenated blood, it flows into the right ventricle. From the right ventricle to it is enters into the pulmonary artery to it is going into the two lungs here for the purification. Once it is going to purified into the lungs by pulmonary veins, a pair of pulmonary veins are going to open into the left atrial chamber, left atria auricle, and from these two the blood is enters into the left ventricle. So left ventricle to the oxygenated blood is going into the systematic artery and supplying into the entire body here. So this is the way the blood is circulating in the body. So here two times the blood is receives into the heart to completing into the entire body one circulation. So it is called double circulation. So that only the humans or into the mammals or the birds we are taking, so they follows because of the four separate chambers, they follows into the double circulatory mechanism we are taking. Is conduction of heartbeat. Heartbeat and sounds. So the heart is conducting. Conducting means, so it is going to working. How it is going to working? So the heart is made up of by the muscles. So made up of by muscles here. So that too cardiac muscle. So any muscle we are taking, the characteristic of the muscles is contraction and the relaxation, excitation and the relaxation. Here the heart is also conducting. So it is forming into the circulation. It is conducting the body circulation. So by the contraction and the relaxation here. For contraction and the relaxation, generally how it is occurs into the contraction and the relaxation. In case of the heart we are taking means the heart contracted and the relaxed autonomously. Their own it is going to contracted and the relaxated here. So for that, the heart itself is having the nodal tissues. So nodal tissues are presented here. So what are these nodal tissues where they are presented in the heart structure means? So whether we are taking into the right atrial chamber, so the openings, that is the right, almost all the right corner of the upper right corner of the right atrial chambers, SAN, this is called as a SA node, sino-arterial node it is. So atrial chamber, the sinus is going to open. So coronary sinus where it is going to open, that place, near to that place, the nodal tissue is presented. It is called as a sino-arterial node. So itself, the SA node, so SA node itself is acting as a pacemaker. It is act as a pacemaker here. There is another node is presented. This is called as a AVN or AV node here. AV node, Arterio-Ventricular node. Why we given name of the Arterio-Ventricular node means here near to the Arterio-Ventricular septum. This is the AV septum. This is the AV septum here. So near to the AV septum it is placed here. So that is the right atrial chamber, the lower left corner of the right atrial chamber. There is one more nodal tissue is presented. So this is called as a AV node. So like this, the two nodal tissues are presented here. So with the help of these two nodal tissues only, the heart is going to conducting, heartbeat is going to occurring here. So how it is means, first of all, the SA node we are taking, means sino-arterial node we are taking. Means here the depolarization of cardiac muscles. So in SA node, the depolarization of the cardiac muscles in the SA node. So the depolarization mechanism, you know sir, depolarization is nothing but as the influx of the sodium ions. In the muscles, the influxing of the sodium ions. When the sodium ions are going to influxing, that time the muscular layer is going to, the epithelial layer of the muscle is going to depolarize here. So like this, the SAN node, the cells of the SAN node, first they are starting into the depolarization. Once it is starting into the depolarization, from here to electric current is passing here. The waves are going to passing. So by that way, first SA node is acting as a pacemaker. It is initiating into the electrical conductivity. Once it is initiated into the electrical conductivity, the electrical impulse are going to spreading the entire surface of atrial chambers. All the chambers, the entire walls of the atrial chamber, right and the left chambers are going to receive these electrical conductions, and these are going to contracting here. Next, some of these electrical impulse also received by the AV node here. When they are received into the AV node, from the SA node to AV node is going to receive into this electrical impulse. These are going to amplifying here because it is getting only into the FU. So one or two electrical charge, electrical impulse only it is getting here. So those one or two electrical impulse is not enough to conducting into the, so contracting into the remaining other parts. The remaining parts conduction, it is not enough. This stimulation is not enough here. So that only AV node is act as a pace setter. It acts as a pace setter or amplifier here. So it is going to amplifying into these electrical conductions here. Here the AV node is connected with a number of cardiac muscle fibers are present. Cardiac muscle fibers are connected with the AV node. So these are forming as a bundle. This bundle is called as a bundle of His. Bundle of His. So through this bundle of His, whatever it is the AV node is receives into the impulse, they are going to amplify it and they are sending into the bundle of His, or it is also called as a AV bundle. It is also called as a AV bundle here because it is connected the AV node, AV bundle or bundle of his. Later on, this bundle of his, later it is going to divided as a number of fibers and distributed the entire walls of the ventricles here. The entire wall of the ventricle is getting into the muscle fibers here. So these fibers are called Purkinje fibers. Purkinje fibers here. So through these Purkinje fibers, the electrical conduction is spreading into the entire surface of the ventricle. So like this SA node conduction, so it is spreading into the entire walls of the atrial chambers. AV node conduction is spreading into the electrical conduction the entire walls of the ventricular chambers. Like this, atria is going to contracting and ventricles are going to contracting here. So this is a way. So the SA node and the AV node is involving into the conduction of the heart. So whenever the heart is going to conduct it, so what it is happened, so one contraction, one relaxation is occurs. So at that time the heart is pumping into the blood into the different parts of the body. So this is called as a heartbeat. Actually this is called as a heartbeat here. When the heart is going to beating, sometimes it is going to beats into the overly, so per minute of the duration, sometimes it is going to beating into the slowly here. Whether it is beating into the very fastly, so that is called as a tachycardia, fast beating, over beating. Whether it is beating into the slowly, less number of beats is forming, that is called as a bradycardia here. So like this, tachycardia is a over beating process and low beating process is called as a bradycardia here. When the heart is going to beating, a certain pressure is going to forming. So these two processes, once the contraction and relaxation is called as a systole, is called as a contraction and is forming the certain pressure. Diastole is called as a relaxation here, and it is also forming in the a certain pressure. Generally the systolic pressure is the more 120 and the diastolic pressure is the 80 here. So this is in the mmHg. So this pressure we are going to calculate into the mmHgs here. So 120 by 80 we are going to calculate it. So this is the systole pressure and the diastole pressure. Actually the heartbeat we are going to recognize or identify, we are hearing by using of the stethoscope. We are means when we are using the stethoscope, so that time there the two sounds are producing. One is into the lub sound and other one is the dub sound here. When the lub sound is produced, this is called as the first sound here. This is called as the first sound and this is called as the second sound. So when the lub sound is going to produce, means here the tricuspid valves and the bicuspid valves, when the ventricles are going to contracting to preventing the backflow into the blood into the atrial chambers, these valves are going to suddenly they are closing. Whenever they are suddenly closing, that time a sound is producing, that is called as a lub sound here, first sound here. So after these are going to close because of the pressure, so in the ventricles, so the blood enters into the pulmonary artery and the systematic artery. Again the ventricles are going to open, that is a relaxing here. They are going to expand. So that time the pressure is going to decreases into the ventricular chambers. So there is a possibility into the backflow of the blood from the pulmonary artery and the systematic artery. So to preventing this backflow of the pulmonary artery and the systematic artery, so semilunar valves already we discussed. pulmonary semilunar and the systematic semilunar walls, those are going to closing here to preventing the backflow. That time the second sound is producing, that is called as a dub sound. So like this, the two sounds we are hearing by using of the stethoscope here. So like this, the heart, the human heart we are taking, so it is conducting and so forming into the two sounds here.